We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It's Tuesday. This is kind of the official start to the week. Yesterday was a federal holiday, Columbus Day. A lot of things need to get done, but nothing happens on a federal level anyway when you have a federal holiday. So, Tuesday is kind of our Monday this week. And since our weeks kind of turned into shit shows, we're going to have to compact that shit show into 4 days as opposed to 5 days. It should be interesting. Some things coming up. We know about the lawsuit in New York. Donald Trump quit coming to that lawsuit because he couldn't handle the truth. He got a little too nervous, a little unhinged, a little triggered, and they didn't think it would be safe for him to continue in the courtroom. It's not going well for him there. And today, it's probably not going to get any better because the person on the witness stand is supposed to be Alan Weisselberg, the former CFO of the Trump organization. He was convicted of fraud, tax fraud, as well as the company being convicted of 17 cases of fraud. So the thing is Alan Weisselberg has to testify, and he's been pretty loyal to Donald Trump up to this point. But I think he's got some extra pressure on him at this stage of the game. He's either going to need to talk and be truthful, or he could maybe get sent back to jail. Now, of course, this is a lawsuit. So there is no jail time involved for anybody. But we know that Letitia James and Alvin Bragg up in the Manhattan district, who found him guilty of felony charges, have worked together a lot, shared evidence and witnesses and such. And it wouldn't be at all surprising if Alvin Bragg put a little extra pressure on him. Now, he's got another problem in this case because he's one of the defendants in this case. Donald Trump, Don Jr., Eric Jr., Alan Weisselberg, and a few other people. So not only does he maybe have the threat of jail time for not speaking the truth, but the fact is he could not go to jail in this situation, but get his ass sued. And I'm guessing he's pretty much run out of money at this point after having spent money on lawyers in the criminal case. Not a good day for Alan Weisselberg. And let's assume he does speak up. This is an even worse day for Donald Trump because he knows where the bodies are buried. Every bit of money that came in, every bit of money that went out, he touched. And so did Donald Trump. And that's why I was, talking about over and over recently that once this lawsuit is over and they take everything away from Donald Trump, because make no mistake, that's what's going to happen. It wouldn't surprise me if Alvin Bragg steps up and say, by the way, Donnie, I got some criminal charges for you too. Don't know for sure that that's going to happen, but it makes sense that it would. Now, Donnie's got enough trouble. Alvin Bragg doesn't need to indict him again to make his life miserable. His life is already miserable. Talk about having a bad week coming up. That would be the entire Republican Party in the House of Representatives. Now, you remember that at the behest of Matt Gaetz and some of the other MAGA fucks, they kicked Kevin McCarthy out the door. They took him out of the speaker's job. They thought they did something there, but they didn't account for a couple of things. They didn't seem to care that they were going to have a tough time figuring out who the next Speaker of the House is, because they don't have the vote for anybody in the Republican Party that could get the job. And then a little thing like this war with Hamas and Israel starts. And we're required to do some things. And the Republicans are always talking about supporting Israel because they think it's worth votes to them. But here's the problem. Now this has happened. They're back in session as of today. They have to get a new speaker to get anything done. But they aren't going to be working on the speaker today. They said, we'll get together on Wednesday and then we'll get a new speaker. Well, that's problematic because what's going on in Israel and the Gaza Strip needs attention today. This isn't going to play well for the Republicans. They aren't going to do well. So this is going to change up their entire strategy. And what's going to happen? Who knows? I don't fucking know. They don't fucking know. But something is going to have to happen. So that should make the week a little interesting. All right. I've got some emails, so let's get to it. Now, this first one comes from somebody I don't think has written before. In fact, I'm pretty sure of it. She goes by the name of Grandma Carol. All right. Hi, Mike. I haven't sent an email as yet, and I wish this could have been a better subject for my first one. Are we really surprised? Typical Trump, isn't it? All about him. Hundreds, if not thousands, die or will die in the coming months. Hopefully not years, but that doesn't matter to Diaper Donnie, does it? I just hope the American people see this. My gut feeling thinks they do by what I've been hearing from other everyday people and Republicans. My fear is, since the election is more than a year away, people's emotions and memories can sometimes be a bit short. What are your thoughts on this? I'm sure you realize people will need much reassurance and comfort from you, as you always give them. This is a kind of test email because it's my first, and I'm surprised at how easy the words came to me, and I'm not nervous. I haven't missed a single podcast of yours since I discovered you over a year ago, and sometimes I even listen twice in the most unusual places. I won't go into that. Oh, now you got to go into that. Unusual. Where's an unusual place to listen to a podcast? You got my mind spinning here now. I need to know. Anyway, she says, keep them coming as I trust and enjoy your take and experience on today's topics. As they call me, Grandma Carol. Well, I can relate to that because I'm known by at least one person as Grandpa, not Grandpa Mike, but Grandpa. And so that is probably the greatest title I've ever held. And I'm guessing you feel the same way about being called Grandma. I know my wife loves that title too. You know, it's funny, when I was a young boy, I had a grandmother. She wasn't that old and she was a little, what's the word? A little self-centered. She had her issues, but she was nice and she was an attractive young woman at the time, young compared to what I am now, but she was my grandma. And we got into places sometimes and I'd say, Grandma, come here, Grandma, come here. And she goes, could you just kind of back off calling me Grandma? What the fuck am I supposed to call you, Marge? A 7-year-old boy calling this elderly woman Marge? No. It somehow bugged her, but I got to tell you, when I hear my granddaughter call me Grandpa, that is the greatest thing I've ever fucking heard. Anyway, I appreciate the kind words, Grandma Carol. And you're absolutely right about Donald Trump. He is a malignant narcissist, and this is something I talked about on a TikTok earlier yesterday. That's the amazing thing. You want to know who Donald Trump is. You think about all that's going on. You got the war in Ukraine. You've got the Gaza Strip war. Donald Trump has 4 indictments in 4 different jurisdictions, 91 felony charges. He's got friends and family and employees all flipping on him. He's looking at losing everything he owns and all the money he has in this lawsuit in New York. And yesterday, what does he bitch about? What does he go on Truth Social and scream about? Well, he's mad at Forbes magazine. And why? Well, Forbes magazine dropped him off the top 400 richest people in the world. Dude never belonged in that 400. Everything he's done is a fraud. Everything he's done is a lie. We've seen the taxes. We've seen the evidence. We've seen the baking. We've seen the fraudulent estimates they made on the value of his properties. He was never worth that much money. He should have never been in the top 400. But with all this shit going on around him, that's the only thing he complains about. He's complaining about Forbes, how they're failing and how they never were any good because they dropped him off the top 400. Isn't that interesting? This is so malignant narcissist. The world around you is burning down, fucking burning down. And all he cares about is how he looks. This guy is delusional. I'm not even quite sure if he realizes how bad a condition he is currently in. I mean, I think he thinks he can still pull this out, still come out looking like a rose, smelling like a rose. But that's not going to happen. He's done. He has no chance at all. It's amazing when you listen to this guy. He does seem delusional. Some people think, well, he's just putting on a brave face in spite of all the bad things that are happening because he thinks he can talk his way out of it. Partially that's true, but he is delusional. There is no question. He believes the shit he says. And that's part of the reason why people have accepted it. He's so convincing about what he says to certain people that they believe him. Now, again, it's only certain people, fucking dumb people. But unfortunately, in this country, we have our share of dumb fucking people. Now, you're worried about people worrying about this latest situation, that the stuff will be exposed and Donald Trump will be proved culpable for this, and then we'll forget about it during the election. And that's a reasonable concern to have because that's how Americans behave. But Carol, this is what I can tell you. It's been like that since Donald Trump has been in office. There's some scandal, some crime, some corruption, and we're all wrapped up in it. And then we forget about it because something bigger comes along or something different, even more scandalous comes along. Whether we remember this instance that you're talking about or not, it'll come back up again. There's no question. But you can trust that between now and then, there is going to be more shit. Donald Trump can't help himself. He implicates himself every time he fucking talks. Whether we forget about this last instance that you were talking about or we remember, it doesn't matter. There's too much. There's too much hanging over his head. Like I've told you before, he has 91 felony charges. He has district attorneys that have a 98 or 99% conviction rate. Out of those 91, we need maybe 1 or 2 convictions. And he's done. He's going away for the rest of his life because he'll be 78 years old in 2024. So don't worry about little bits of information or evidence or even like Florida. Don't worry about that shit. There's too much coming down on him and he's done. He's done. Some of this stuff that we know about may not really come out, and there may not be any revelations about this until years after he's in jail, maybe long dead and gone, because he will be in the history books. And this period of time will be one fucked up period of history. All right, the next email. Hi, Mike. Thanks for a great podcast. I want to chime in on the polls that keep being quoted by the MAGA side. I've had several experiences recently that prove how untrustworthy they are. I'm registered as an independent. I seem to be on the Republican poll list. I've had multiple texts from polling services. When I follow the link and answer the questions, do you support Donald Trump with no, the poll ends and says, thanks for your time. The other day, out of curiosity, I answered like I was a Republican, just for fun and to see if my thoughts were correct. The poll went on and on and on. There were questions about religious affiliations, how often you go to church, if you support abortion. It was crazy. Now, after I clicked through and submitted a bogus response, one very much against the MAGA narrative, I was able to go back to the original text and click on the link again. That's really secure, accurate polling. This time I indicated that I would be voting Democrat. The same poll ended with that question. Confirmation bias much? I appreciate you calling out the lack of credibility of the polls. In my experience, they are a crock. Keep up the great work, Trevor. Now, we had another Trevor that writes in from time to time. It's been on the show. This is a different Trevor, I believe. Maybe wrong, but I think it's a different Trevor. Anyway, Trevor, thank you for your points in your email, and I think they're well received. I keep saying the polls, just ignore them. They're historically wrong all the time. We don't know who's behind these polls. We don't know who they're reaching out to. And clearly, the security on this particular poll is non-existent. So all you can say is, this is bullshit. You can't trust the Republican Party. Sometimes you can't trust the Democratic Party. So why in the world would you trust polls? You don't. You can't trust polls. All right. Next one says, Mike, I denounce violence with every fiber of my being. The systematic slaughter of innocent people in the past couple of days to both Israelis and Palestinians is unconscionable and deplorable. I spent 7 months on a study abroad trip to Israel between high school and college. I am by no means an expert on Israeli-Palestinian relations. What I do know is that I'm Jewish, but I'm not a Zionist. What I do know is my experience growing up as a Jewish kid in America and the pro-Israeli propaganda that was fed to me my entire life. What I do know is that Israel is severely problematic at best. As I scroll through my social media, I'm seeing pro-Israel sentiment on many a Jewish person's timeline. People who are educated, people who I deeply respect, people who I know question their values because of their blind support for an imperialistic regime. It appears that some believe that you must support Israel if you are to support Jewry. I believe these are separate entities. What do I know with every fiber of my being is that Palestinians are oppressed and deserve human rights just as much as anyone else on the planet. What I do know is that Trump's tiny orange hands have something to do with the carnage in some way. What I also know is that I don't give a fuck about Kylie Jenner's political stance. Anyway, if you'd like, I'm happy to be on the show to discuss this further. Now, this is written by Jenna. Do you remember Jenna? I think Jenna was the first listener to be a guest on the show. Very smart woman. It was great to talk to her, and it's great to hear from her. It's been a while, Jenna. Fucking pick it up a little bit. But you make some good points. You know, this whole thing with this war, Hamas and Israel. People ask me all the time, what's my opinion on it? And I always say I don't have an opinion on it. This situation is very much like the abortion situation. No matter which way you go with it, somebody's going to come at you. There is innocence on both sides and there is criminality on both sides. And I'm not smart enough to know what it is or who's worse. I think she makes a good point. Israel is one thing. Jewish people are another thing. And I would say the same thing about Palestinians. Let's be honest. Hamas isn't indicative of all Palestinians. In fact, many Palestinians are oppressed by Hamas. Again, I'm going into depths I really don't belong in because I don't know much about it. I'm an old white guy, so I don't have a dog in the fight. But I think the important thing we got to focus on is stopping the war and getting it calmed down. But what you need to understand is in the last 15 years, there's been 5 different conflicts. This may be the biggest one of all, but 5 different conflicts in the last 15 years. That's one every 3 years. This isn't a new event. This isn't the first time it's happened. Hell, this has been happening since well before I was born, I think in the 40s. It's a tough situation that never gets resolved. And unfortunately, because the powers that be don't resolve this situation, a lot of innocent people die for no good goddamn reason. But, I don't live there. You don't live there now. But it's important that America somehow steps in and offers some assistance. Now, I know Hamas is known as a terroristic organization. I have no reason to believe that they're not. The fact that they attacked Israel out of the blue, they're killing, abducting, raping innocent people. That's a fucking problem. And one of the things I'm seeing now is Israel. See, that's the one thing I've always talked about. Israel's a relatively geologically small country, but they're a powerful country. You fuck with Israel, you've got a problem. And I think Hamas may have bitten off more than they can chew. I mean, I think Israel at this point is looking just to wipe out the Gaza Strip, just to prove their point. And I understand that attitude given what's happened. What's going on is absolutely tragic. But now a lot of Palestinian people are going to die, a lot of Jewish people are going to die, and it's all going to be for naught. Like I said, over the last 15 years, we've had 5 conflicts like this or similar to it on the same topic. Many, many people have died. And look, we're in the same situation we were 15 years ago, 65 years ago, or longer. It's been going on forever, and there has to be some resolution, but it's never been able to be achieved. And as much as America has tried to help, they haven't been much help. Jimmy Carter got close to getting things done, but that didn't stick. And now we've got what we've got. America has to be in a position to help out in any way to quell this situation. But as long as we don't have a Speaker of the House, there's not much America can do. And that is a problem. If we don't help out, if we can't help out, that's on us. And if it's on us, it's on the Republicans for putting us in a position where we're just not ready to handle a situation that we should have. All right. Thank you, Jenna. And you're welcome on the show anytime. We had a good time talking the last time you were on some time back. Like I say, she's a very smart, very articulate woman, and I'm looking forward to having you on the show. All right, the next email says, "Hi, Mike. I really enjoyed your answers to Good Karen's question on Monday's show. I'm absolutely disgusted by the GOP's accusations concerning Biden's supposed open border policies with Mexico. I'm also concerned as to why the media fails to correct these lying accusations every time they're stated on the lying GOP party. If Biden has an open border policy, where is it written? I've seen Biden and Harris tell people from South America not to come to the U.S. If anyone wants to see how open the borders are, I invite them to watch in real time the U.S. live border cameras on the International Bridge in Texas. There are almost 2,000 miles of border with the U.S. and Mexico. Most of it is separated by the Rio Grande, inhospitable desert, mountains, and private property. There will never be a wall that can be built in some areas, ever. Any wall that can be built can be breached by climbing over, under, using battery-operated tools to cut through, or being blown up by the cartel. Or did you think they don't have access to explosives? I suppose you can spend the entire U.S. budget, but stationing people every 25 feet from each of the 2,000 miles, at minimum wage, of course, starting with a GOP representative doing an 8-hour a month mandatory shift. You can threaten to shoot the people trying to cross, but they have nothing left to lose. So I don't think that threat will be useful at this point. They could have died in their own country or can die trying to achieve a better life in this one. There's no simple answer. The Democrats, Republicans, and Mexico need to work on effective, humane solutions to this crisis. Blaming Biden with absolutely no proof of your assertions does nothing to alleviate the problem. Thanks for your great show. Patty in Oregon. I was born and lived 50 years in Texas. Thank you very much, Patty. And you're absolutely right. This is a problem that's been going on forever. Every president has to try to come up with an answer to deal with this situation, and none of them have, including Donald Trump. And building a wall is just a simple-minded answer to a big, complex problem. And we see how well that worked. It doesn't work. We do have to do something about it. But the idea of just saying, no immigrants coming to this country, we just close it off and we're isolationist. That's stupid. We've talked about it many times. This country is made up of immigrants. My family came from Germany, Norway, Sweden. None of my ancestors were born in America. They came here. I had the good fortune to be born to parents that were born in America, and I was born in America. But that's all luck. That's just how it turned out. There may be many immigrants that would come to this country that could offer a lot, be a big contributor to the future of this country. I mean, you Republicans love Elon Musk. He's not from this country. So what the fuck's your problem? I'll tell you what it is, Patty. The Republicans pick buzzwords or special topics, and they'll do and say whatever they can to try to blame liberals, Democrats, or Joe Biden. They got to grab something. And the border is the one that is a trigger for a lot of people. Yeah, they're letting the rapists and the killers come across the borders, the drug dealers and all this. Well, there could be some of that coming across the border, but the vast amount of people coming are just innocent, poor people looking for a better world, looking for a world where their life isn't at risk every day. To suggest it's otherwise is just a flat out lie. And the Republicans will use the border, will use inflation, whether it or not it's a problem, to fight against Democrats, because they can't fight on truth. They can't fight on law or facts. So they do what they do. They try to smear or own the libtards. And it's sad and it's childish and it's not working. So you would think they'd look into some other strategies. All right, the next one. Hi, Boomer. It looks like what you mentioned about McCarthy returning could be getting momentum. If they can't get votes, Repubs will run a play where they make Democrats seem like the ones shutting down the government, not down by not bailing out Kevin. Well, fuck him. Kevin's just like Trump, the kind of punk that as soon as you let him up, he throws a rock at the back of your head. You know those guys. The only deal I make is for an approved moderate, and then with a few concessions like no more impeachment bullshit, and the maglafucks get minimized. Best, Garage Door Jeff. He continues on. P.S. May I ask, was the basic programming on the station you and Ed worked at NPR standards, classical, Prairie Home Companion? I'll answer that one first. It was a station owned by the Minneapolis Public Schools, and it was a different kind of public station. It was a public station, but it was a jazz station, oddly enough. They played jazz, and we had a good, loyal audience that listened to jazz. On the weekends, they'd play some bluegrass, and that got amazing amounts of listeners. And of course, traffic. Traffic played a big part of the programming. I happened to be doing the traffic because the agreement that the station had with the Department of Transportation is to do traffic reports every 10 minutes. I know that sounds crazy, but it's me doing it. So you know it was fucking entertaining. It wasn't that entertaining. So we would do the morning show in the afternoon. We'd play jazz. There'd be a little interplay. I'd do a traffic report, more jazz, more interplay. That's pretty much what the That's pretty much what the format was. And, be perfectly honest with you, we didn't get huge ratings. We got respectable ratings. Like I told you, when I left there, we had a different crowd of people running the station than when I first got there, and they were running it into the ground, and they were pushing people like Ed and I and some older folks at the station because we made too much money. They were pushing us out. I wasn't having that shit, so I kind of burned that motherfucker down when I decided to retire at the last moment. Um, but I told the guy, and I've said this before on the show, I said, you know what? This station doesn't have that many listeners. And most of the listeners come from people like Ed and I doing what we do. They're very loyal to us. You're going to piss off a lot of people when we leave. And they did. But I told them this. I said, listen, when I leave here, I'm going to do something on the internet, podcast, something like that. And you know what's going to happen? I'm going to have more listeners, more viewers, more followers, whatever it is, than you have on this whole fucking station. And he kind of smirked at me like, yeah, right, buddy. Well, I'm proud to say at this point in time, with the podcast and the TikToks and all the other stuff, I have probably 10 times more listeners or viewers than they fucking ever had. So fuck you. Anyway, talking about some of the other things you were mentioning, you mentioned about McCarthy returning, getting momentum. This is something I said a while back when I was trying to analyze what is going on. We've got an interesting situation. They kicked Kevin McCarthy out. Now they have to put in another Speaker of the House. The only problem is that no one in the Republican Party can likely get 218 votes because the Republican Party in the House is so divided. So they're kind of fucked. It could go a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 2 months without a Speaker of the House. And that means nothing, zero gets done in the House of Representatives, including getting this budget situation straightened out. They said, we're going to take a week off and we'll start dealing with it Wednesday, which is tomorrow. They sat with their thumbs up their asses for a fucking week. And now they're going to try to get to it. And they're coming back today, but they're going to say, well, we need an extra day. But then we get this attack by Hamas in Israel. And that really puts the pressure on because it's incumbent on the American government to do something in this situation. But as I've said, because we don't have a Speaker of the House, it's very hard to do that. So the pressure is very big on the Republican Party. They're looking stupid. If after getting rid of Kevin McCarthy, the worst thing that could happen happened, they got a lot of pressure. But you still have these MAGA fucks making it impossible for the Republicans to get 218 votes. They got two options. Some reasonable-minded Republicans, if they exist, get together with the Democrats and elect a moderate Speaker of the House. Now, this will piss off MAGA, but fuck them. They should be marginalized and kicked out the door anyway. That could happen. But we know with the Republicans, they're hard-pressed to do something like that because they're so afraid of MAGA. So what's the other option? Well, they're in a pickle now because they're in a corner and they need to get something done quickly. The only other option could be, and I suggested this, a few days ago, that maybe when they can't elect another Speaker of the House, maybe they just say, fuck it, go back to Kevin McCarthy and say, look, we fucked up. Let's get you back on and let's get some things done because we're looking stupid here. And I put that out there thinking, I'm just trying to think of what are the other options they have. They can't just let it go vacant for the next month. They can't do that. And if they can't vote in one of their own to be Speaker of the House, what other options are there? And more people are talking about, let's just get Kevin McCarthy back. The vast majority of the Republicans didn't want to get rid of him anyway, but there were 8 Republicans that did, the MAGA fucks. And I think some of the normal Republicans thought the Democrats would help out and save Kevin McCarthy. I even thought they might too. But then, of course, Kevin McCarthy comes out and says all this stupid shit about the Democrats trying to throw them under the bus. So the Democrats say to themselves, fuck this guy, let them flounder. And floundering is exactly what they're doing now, even far worse than we expected. So this week is going to be very telling. What are they going to do? They must do something. What are they going to do? The only problem with the Republicans is this. They're known for doing nothing. Well, that's not going to be acceptable in this situation. So we'll see what happens. All right, we'll take a quick break and we'll be right back. All right, let's talk about what's going on over in the Gaza Strip. It's a mess. It's tragic. It's scary, not only for Israel and Hamas, but countries nearby and for the entire world at this point. As I've said, this is a conflict that's been going on for decades and decades, long before I was ever born. And we've constantly tried to get some resolution to this. It's never happened. And I think there are problems day to day, even when there aren't wars. As Jenna pointed out, Palestinians are being oppressed, Israelis are being attacked. It's just a fucking mess. And it's a mess that we've had trouble finding any answer to. So Hamas attacks Israel, which was kind of strange in the way they did it and how effective they were at it. Because Israel's a very strong country. You don't want to fuck around with Israel. But somehow Hamas was able to do what they did. We're now finding out that it's presumed that Iran is helping them out. And we know that Russia helps out Iran. Now, I'd talked about something earlier on the podcast, and I'm hearing some Democratic creators on TikTok say something different. I suggested that if Iran was involved in backing up Hamas and they were so successful, which they wouldn't have normally been unless they had some help. And then, of course, Iran is basically controlled by Russia. I presume the possibility that given that Donald Trump has had boxes and boxes and boxes and boxes of classified documents, military documents, it's conceivable that Donald Trump, in any number of situations, could have given information about Israel to Russia, who then in turn sent it over to Iran, and this whole process started. The reason Russia would want to do that, one of many reasons, but one reason comes to mind is that they're kind of under the microscope in their war against Ukraine. It's not going well, and the people of the world aren't liking Vladimir Putin or the Russians. So this would be a way to distract from that and get us focused on some new war, some important war in the Middle East. Now, here's the thing. I've seen some creators out there say, people are talking about Donald Trump giving information to the Russians, who then in turn gave information to Iran, and that's how Hamas was so successful. They look right in the camera and they say, that did not happen. I'm tired of conspiracy theories, especially from the Democratic side. Now, understand, these are Democratic creators. These aren't Republicans. But they're trying to admonish people for thinking that Donald Trump may have had something to do with this. And I take offense to this because I'm not one to spew conspiracy theories. I'm one to take a look at logic and facts and kind of analyze it from that point of view. And that's what I've done in this situation. I just didn't pull this out of my ass. I have a reason for saying it. And these people will say Donald Trump never gave Russia any of this information so Hamas could do this. Well, how do you fucking know that? And besides, we know one instance for sure that actually happened. And again, like Jenna said, or one of the other emailers said, shit happens and then we just forget about it because something bigger happens. But I brought it up on the podcast again, and these people that are saying, oh, it's just a conspiracy theory, then please explain to me this. Right after Donald Trump gets into office, he has a meeting in the Oval Office. There are no witnesses. There is no press. There's nobody. He has 3 Russian higher ups in there. 2 of them, at least, are thought to be Russian spies. Okay, so that's circumstantial evidence. And yeah, it could have happened then, but who knows? Okay, I get your point there. But after that meeting happened, word came out that Donald Trump, the new president, inadvertently revealed some top secret information. Well, that's weird, but that doesn't prove anything. Yeah, but the top secret military information that he leaked and they reported on was of Israel. Don't tell me it's a conspiracy theory. We know at least in that one instance that Donald Trump transferred information about Israel to Russian spies. That fucking happened. So don't tell me it's a conspiracy theory. If you want to just push it aside and say that didn't happen, you're doing a disservice and you're not being very bright about this fucking situation. An investigation, a theory, is not just a conspiracy theory. A conspiracy theory is, oh yeah, we faked the election and it was a fraudulent election, even though all the evidence shows otherwise. That's a conspiracy theory, or something that QAnon would say. I can't tell you that what I'm saying is true, and I admit that, but you can't deny that there is some suspicious shit about it. We know that Donald Trump had all kinds of classified documents over and above that meeting in his Oval Office. He had at least a couple of meetings with Vladimir Putin, again, with no witnesses, nobody. And they say, well, how that happened in 2017. This is 2023. How fast do you think this shit happens? Got to go from Russia to Iran to Hamas, build it up, get equipment moved, do all this shit that obviously has been done and they couldn't have done on their own. So to tell me I'm spewing some conspiracy theory because I suggest Donald Trump had something to do with it, listen, if you believe that, then you're dumber than the fucking Republicans. Maybe it didn't happen that way, but it's sure worth looking into given the circumstantial evidence that we have here. We know he gave shit from Israel to Russian spies. That should be enough to start an investigation and figure out what happened. And I'll bet this, I bet that investigation has already been done and Jack Smith already knows about it. So when it comes out that that's what happened, all you other creators that want to play this fucking game, you can fuck off. You can fuck the right off. So anyway, let's talk about that war. Hamas hits Israel. Israel's a powerful country. Israel increased airstrikes on the Gaza Strip and sealed it off from food, fuel, and other supplies in retaliation for the bloody incursion by Hamas militants as the war death rose to nearly 1,600 on both sides. And this is just in a few days. Hamas also escalated on Monday, pledging to kill captured Israelis if attacks targeted civilians without warning. Now, on the war's third day, Israel was still finding bodies from Hamas' stunning weekend attack into southern Israeli towns. Rescue workers found 100 bodies in the tiny farming community of Beeri, around 10% of its population, after a long hostage standoff with gunmen. Now, in Gaza, tens of thousands fled their homes as the airstrikes continued. Israeli military said it had largely gained control in its southern towns after the attack caught its vaunted military and intelligence apparatus. Everybody was completely off guard, and that's another good question. Where was the intelligence here? Why did America not know about this? Why did Israel not have some hints or clues that this was going to happen? That seems kind of weird. Maybe because that information was coming from people they didn't suspect, like, I don't know, maybe Iran or even worse, Russia. That could be. But now Israel is going to be motherfucking pissed. They could end up wiping Gaza off the face of the earth, the whole strip, just wipe it off the earth and take every Palestinian with them. And the thing about it is, it's not the Palestinian people that's the problem here. It's Hamas, a terrorist organization. That's the tragedy of all this. Now, there apparently has been 130 soldiers and civilians abducted from inside Israel. Israeli tanks and drones were deployed to guard beaches in the Gaza border fence to prevent new incursions. Thousands of Israelis were evacuated from more than a dozen towns near Gaza, and the military summoned 300,000 reservists, a massive mobilization in a very short time. Like I said, I don't know why you fuck with Israel, because they are strong and they are powerful. They have we were worried about Russia and their fighting force. They ain't shit compared to Israel. The moves, along with Israel's formal declaration of war on Sunday, pointed to Israel increasingly shifting to offensive against Hamas, threatening greater destruction in the densely populated and impoverished Gaza Strip. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said, "We have only started striking Hamas. What we will do to our enemies in the coming days will reverberate with them for generations." And I don't doubt it. I do not fucking doubt it. It's going to get ugly over there. We've got 1,600 dead. Going to be a lot more than that when it's all said and done. Israeli Foreign Minister Eli Cohen warned Hamas against harming any of the hostages, saying this war crime will not be forgiven. Netanyahu appointed a former military commander to manage the hostage and missing person crisis. Now, a major question remains whether Israel will launch a ground assault into the tiny Mediterranean coastal territory. The last ground assault was in 2014. Israel and Hamas have been in repeated conflicts in the past years, often sparked by tensions around Jerusalem holy site. The context has become more potentially explosive, and both sides talk of shattering with violence a years-long Israeli-Palestinian deadlock left by the moribund peace process. Now, the surprise weekend attack by Hamas left a death toll unseen since the 1973 war with Egypt and Syria. This is fomenting calls to crush Hamas no matter the cost, rather than continuing to try to bottle it up in Gaza. Israel is run by its most hard-right government ever, dominated by ministers who adamantly reject any Palestinian statehood. Now, Hamas, in turn, says it's ready for a long battle to end an Israeli occupation it says is no longer tolerable. Desperation has grown among Palestinians, many of whom see nothing to lose under unending Israeli control and increasing settler depredations in the West Bank, the blockade in Gaza, and what they see as the world's apathy. And I guess there is some apathy. The world sees this. We see the fighting. We don't know the facts of the oppression or the violence or the murders or the rapes. We aren't there to see this. This is a small strip of land that Israelis and the Palestinians have been fighting over for decades. You would think they could come to some kind of compromise, but they have not. So this is what we get. It's like the border situation. It's like it's like the abortion issue. Both sides have points. Is it a problem? Is it not a problem? How can you get people to compromise on something they feel is absolutely right or absolutely wrong? It's tough to do. It's tough to do. And short of Israel going in and wiping out everybody, it's going to continue to be a problem. All right. We talked about this a little bit in the emails, and I think it's worth bringing up again. Representative Kevin McCarthy, until recently, of course, he was the Speaker of the House, he told reporters Monday that the United States needs to help Israel after the militant group Hamas killed hundreds of people with the surprise attack. So what's that mean? But of course, McCarthy's target audience for his remarks may have been less the American public and more his colleagues in the House Republican Conference. He's suggesting exactly what I suggested. The Republicans are in a situation where they can't come up with a new Speaker of the House. They can't elect one person as Speaker of the House. It almost doesn't matter who the Speaker of the House is. They need some Speaker of the House to get anything done. When McCarthy, now just among the 433 representatives, he has no leadership power, currently in office after his historic ouster as Speaker last week, appeared in the same room where he'd often meet with reporters as the Speaker of the House. It seemed like one of his aims was to send a message to his fellow House Republicans. I'm still around if you're having second thoughts. And I can guarantee you, based on what I've heard and quotes from various Republican representatives, there are some second thoughts there. But Republicans, this is what you get when you bend and you bow to MAGA, the Freedom Caucus. What you should have done is gone to the Democrats and say, let's get rid of these MAGA fucks. Let's get something done. And done it, and not kicked out Kevin McCarthy. Don't get me wrong. I don't like Kevin McCarthy. I think he is the weakest Speaker of the House. But when you look at the Republican Party, who's better? There may be some more moderate things, but they're going to have the same problems with the divisiveness that Kevin McCarthy had. So it almost doesn't matter who's in there, just so we have a body in the Speaker's position so we can get things done. Offer aid to Israel, offer aid to Ukraine, fix the budget so we don't shut the country down. All that has to be done, and it's on the Republicans' list of responsibilities, and they can't do it in the current situation. So the most expeditious decision to make here, the most expeditious answer to the problem, may be just putting McCarthy back in. Now, that would be incredibly embarrassing to MAGA. They'd be upset. Be embarrassing to the whole Republican Party. It just further proves that they're nothing more than a shit show. They're in chaos and they can get nothing done. But this is more than politics here. This is people's lives. This is the future of the country and the future of the world. So we'll see if they can pull themselves together enough to get something done. Get a Speaker of the House, whether it be Kevin McCarthy or anybody else, whether they negotiate with the Democrats to get something done, because they could if they negotiated with the Democrats. They just don't have a taste for that. They're more in the partisanship than they are in serving and protecting this country and its Constitution. McCarthy last week kind of brushed off the idea of being drafted to return to the Speaker's chair, saying, "This job has never been about me," signaled a different stance on Tuesday. McCarthy said the conference can decide, when asked if he would accept being nominated for the post, which would make him the third official candidate in addition to Steve Scalise and Jim Jordan. Asked if he believed he was the right person to be the Speaker, McCarthy replied, "That's not my decision. That's the conference." But he noted that without a Speaker in place, the House is limited in what it can do to respond legislatively to the attack on Israel. The legislative language establishing the interim Speaker pro tem position, now held by Patrick McHenry, who's a dipshit, is subject to various interpretations. Now, McCarthy said, unfortunately, the House can do nothing without a Speaker. And he's absolutely right. They can do nothing. So they've got to come up with an answer. Do they put Steve Scalise or Jim Jordan in? Can't get the votes. There isn't 218 people that will vote for them. They got 8 people that voted against Kevin McCarthy. So what do the Republicans do if they make him the third candidate? Well, they get on their hands and knees and go to the Democrats and say, let's work something fucking out. And of course, the Democrats will understand the urgency to this whole situation, and they'll probably push them to the limit, but they would ultimately agree to save face for this country and help out the Israelis and help out Ukrainians and get this budget passed. We know that there's going to be some sticking points even after this 45-day period to get this budget passed. So if I'm the Democrats, I say, look, we'll help you get another speaker in there, whoever it is, Kevin McCarthy or some moderate person. But I need some assurances that the moment he gets in, we get this budget deal done, signed, sealed, delivered, and we don't get a shutdown. Don't be surprised if that's what they try to do. Now, Representative John Duarte said the attack on Israel changes the dynamics and highlights the need for McCarthy's return. Representative Mike Lawler of New York, another GOP moderate, told reporters, a lot of people believe Kevin McCarthy is the right person to lead us. Actually, Hakeem Jeffries is the right person to lead us, but as long as the Republicans hold the majority, that is not going to fucking happen. But again, there's a lot of pressure on the Republican Party. Starting today, they're back in session. They got a lot of problems they need to fix, and they're known for not doing anything. So they're going to have to change some things up here. They're going to have to get on their bicycles and get some shit done. And that's really out of character for them. Now, Joe Biden sat for an interview with Robert Hur. He's the special counsel investigating classified materials found stored improperly at his office. The voluntary interview was conducted at the White House over 2 days, Sunday and Monday, and concluded Monday. According to Washington reporter Charlie Savage, the interview suggests that Hur is nearing the end of his investigation into the materials, which were found by lawyers representing Biden mixed into personal documents at a closet in his office in the Penn Biden Center. Subsequent Justice Department searches also turned up documents at Biden's private home in Delaware, although there is no publicly known evidence these documents were stolen or deliberately concealed. Hur was appointed by Attorney General Merrick Garland around the same time as Special Counsel Jack Smith, who separately investigated the boxes of classified national defense information stored at Mar-a-Lago. Now, in that case, Smith found evidence that Trump deliberately removed the document, shared the information with members of his club, and took steps to conceal them from investigators trying to retrieve them from National Archives. When they try to say, well, Joe Biden did it, it's vastly different. It would appear as though that what Joe Biden did and Mike Pence did was inadvertent. It was a mistake. Donald Trump purposely took these documents, stole these documents, and when he was asked for them back, he tried to fucking hide them. So you can see the difference. I think what's going to happen after this special counsel gets done, they'll say, yeah, it happened. There was no criminal intent or criminal activity, and it will be done. And the Republicans will shit their pants as they do, because they seem to think that what Joe Biden did is comparable to what Donald Trump did. And the fact is, it's not. As much as the Republicans might want it to be, it is fucking not. Now, we had something happen yesterday that I don't think surprises a lot of people. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was attempting to beat out Joe Biden and the Democratic Party to be the presidential candidate in 2024. That was never going to happen. Robert Kennedy Jr. almost seem like a plant from the Republicans. He's an anti-vaxxer. He's big on conspiracy theories. He's a fucking kook. The whole Kennedy family has discredited him. Nobody likes him. So now that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. realized that there was no way he was going to beat out Joe Biden, what's he do? He decides that he's going to run independent. Now, I know there's a lot of Democrats that are worried that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. will take votes away from Joe Biden. I don't think you need to worry about that because there is no way near being a Democrat. RFK Jr. is nowhere near being a Democrat with all the things he believes and the crazy shit he talks about. I think the Republicans are more concerned about him being an independent than the Democrats are. And in fact, Republicans attacked Robert F. Kennedy Jr. on Monday as the longtime environmental lawyer and anti-vaccine activist launched an independent bid for the White House, reflecting growing concerns on the right that the former Democrat now threatens to take votes from President Donald Trump in 2024. Well, Donald Trump isn't going to be the candidate, but let them believe whatever the fuck they want to believe. Now, the Republican National Committee and Trump's campaign both took aim at Kennedy's liberal background, while national Democrats stayed silent as Kennedy insisted in a speech in Philadelphia that he was leaving both political parties behind. Voters should not be deceived by anyone who pretends to have conservative values, said Trump spokesperson Steve Chung. In a statement, he labeled Kennedy's campaign as nothing more than a vanity project for a liberal Kennedy looking to cash in on his family's name. Now, that may be true. That may be accurate. The fiery response exposes the unknowns that lie in Kennedy's long anticipated decision to run as an independent. The move is likely to impact the 2024 race, which appears to be heading toward a rematch between Trump and Joe Biden, but it's still unclear exactly how it will affect things. I see Robert F. Kennedy Jr. much like Joe Manchin and his little party that was going to be a third party. I don't think he'll be there in the end. I don't think he'll have enough money to stay in the race before it's all said and done. And if he does, I think he's going to have more impact on the Republican Party than the Democrats. I mean, you think about this for a while. Some people might like him because of the Kennedy name, in spite of the fact that the Kennedys are coming out and saying, this fuck is crazy. But he talks about anti-vaccine. He talks about conspiracy theories. How many Democrats are going to be attracted to that, especially now that he's not officially a Democrat? Nobody. Now, those things kind of tie in with the Republicans and the QAnon freaks. So I think it's more reasonable to think that he would take away from the Republicans than he would the Democrats. But here's the thing. We know how dirty Republicans play. And I suspect what the Republicans will do, if they have any fear at all in this, they are going to absolutely dismantle RFK Jr. We don't have to worry if he's going to be a third party because the Republicans are going to take him apart. Just watch. We'll see what happens. But I don't think RFK Jr. is something we need to worry about. Certainly not the Democrats, maybe the Republicans. But he doesn't have enough support. He doesn't have enough money. His family's not going to give him money. So I just don't see him being really a factor when it all comes down to it. Now, we'll wrap things up here. I'm going to tell you the story about Donald Trump. Donald Trump, staring down the possibility of losing his New York real estate empire in a fraud trial, griped on Truth Social about being robbed of his civil rights and launched into yet another complaint targeted at the racist state attorney, Letitia James. Trump erupted against James, referred to by him as the corrupt and racist AG Peekaboo James. I'm trying to figure out what he means by peekaboo. Is it a racist trope? Is it an offshoot of another slur? I don't know. That would be my guess, but I don't know what the fuck he's trying to say. Now, she filed a lawsuit in 2022 against Trump and his empire of business, accusing them of inflating the value of his properties and lying to lenders and insurers to achieve favorable terms, which he did do. Now, Donald Trump goes on to say, by any other judge in New York, the trial brought by the corrupt and racist AG Peekaboo James would be dismissed and over, he wrote on his social media site. This case should never have been allowed to be brought. And then the following is in caps, as he does. I have no rights, and I don't even get, under any circumstances, a jury. You don't get a jury, dumb fuck, because you didn't ask for a jury, stupid. Your lawyer's fucked up, and you fucked up. But you hardly probably notice because all you do is fuck up. You're a fuck up, Donnie. Trump doesn't have a jury because his own lawyers failed to request one. He continued to take umbrage over knocking his wealth, especially the discounted price tag of Mar-a-Lago resort in Palm Beach. Peekaboo has misrepresented values to the judge, like Mar-a-Lago being only worth $18 million. See, the judge didn't make that assumption. He was going off taxes that Donald Trump handed in. But this is what Donald Trump does. He takes things that don't make any sense and he tries to expand and exaggerate them as if that's a defense. Well, Donald Trump doesn't have a fucking defense in this case. Trump continued to poke holes in the attempts he contends are blemishing his bottom line. I'm worth much more than my financial statement, so there can be no fraud. I have a 100% disclaimer clause. So again, there can be no fraud. You remember what the disclaimer clause is? On his taxes, he wrote, yeah, some of the stuff may not be accurate. So don't get mad if they're not. Who puts that on their taxes? Does the IRS accept it? Okay, we're going to take your stuff. You've said it's not all accurate, so that's cool. Sorry, that's not the way it fucking goes. Now, then he went on to plead for state officials to intercede and toss the case based on what he perceived as meritless motives, which is bullshit. But Donald Trump is now down to fucking begging because he's scared shitless. He goes on to say this trial is an election interference witch hunt and everybody knows it. No, we don't, Donnie. Vast majority of the people don't buy that at all. New York State should intercede and stop this total travesty of justice. What does he mean by that? Should the prosecution of Trump succeed, he would be in jeopardy of losing everything, his businesses, his buildings, and all his money. The 45th president also is defending himself against indictments in 4 jurisdictions on 91 criminal charges. Former President Donald Trump took to his Truth Social account on Monday to accuse Florida Governor Ron DeSantis of wearing platform heels to mask how short he is. He says, tell me he's not wearing hidden heels, said the meme he shared showing DeSantis on real-time of Bill Maher dressed in boots, coupled with an outline of where his feet supposedly were. Those boots looked a little fucked up. He probably is wearing lifts of some sort. But then apparently so is Donnie. I tell you what, you love shows, you love contests. Let's have you just spontaneously at different times, each of you take off your shoes and let's take a look at what's inside them. Now, DeSantis' footwear on the Maher program has been driving speculation and mockery for days, with the meme Trump tweeted being still shots from a viral TikTok video lambasting the governor. All of this comes as DeSantis, who was once considered the most credible arrival for Trump for the 2024 presidential nomination. He's been slipping in the polls, of course. And that's the other thing that's happening today. And by the time you hear this podcast, it may have already happened. So it's hard for me to talk about it. But I'll mention it anyway, because it'll be interesting to see how this shakes out. Ron DeSantis is scheduled to be interviewed on Morning Joe with Joe Scarborough. He's going to be interviewed by Joe Scarborough, which is interesting. Scarborough isn't going to pull any punches. And we know that Ron DeSantis has a little temper problem. So this could be an interesting situation. I'm going to be looking forward to find out what happens there. And as I say, by the time you hear this podcast, it may be done, and you already know what kind of fucked up shit show that ended up being. But of course, we'll talk about that tomorrow. All right. We're going to wrap up the Rational Boomer podcast. I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen. I hope you have a great day, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.